It starts with small, quiet things like leaves rustling or water moving, but then big problems begin. Crops die, forests become silent, and rivers fill with creatures that shouldn't be there. Some of these animals and plants came to new places by accident, while others were brought on purpose. These invasive species cause a lot of damage, costing billions of dollars. We're going to talk about some of the worst invasive species in the United States, including fish that eat everything and plants that take over whole forests. The rabbit invasion. The story of the rabbit in Australia is a stark example of how a small introduction can lead to massive destruction. A few rabbits, released in 1859, sparked a catastrophe that took over a century to even begin to manage. A wealthy landowner in Melbourne brought a few wild rabbits to his property, hoping to hunt them. Within years, their population exploded. In just 50 years, they had spread across the entire continent, devastating crops, soil, and native wildlife. Despite many attempts to control them, including fences, poisons, and even viruses, nothing seemed to stop them. Building rabbit-proof fences was difficult because the rabbits could dig under them. Eventually, a virus killed many rabbits, but those in cooler areas survived and became resistant. Australia's delicate ecosystem wasn't ready for these new animals. Rabbits reproduce quickly and spread rapidly. By the early 1900s, there were over 10 billion rabbits. They didn't just eat plants. Their constant hunger caused habitat destruction, soil erosion, and a huge loss of biodiversity. They are a big problem for farming, nature reserves, and even cities. Those rabbit holes weren't just cute. They damaged roads, embankments, and other structures. It was as if they were trying to destroy everything. The Asian Carp. The Asian carp, originally introduced to control algae and weeds in fish farms, has become an ecological disaster in the United States. Brought over in the 1970s, these invasive fish escaped into the wild during floods and have since spread uncontrollably. They have already caused significant harm to the Mississippi River Basin and now threaten the Great Lakes. These large, fast-reproducing fish consume massive amounts of plankton, outcompeting native species and disrupting entire ecosystems. Their impact extends to both commercial and sport fishing, as they reduce native fish populations and alter aquatic environments. One particularly troublesome species, the silver carp, is known for its unusual jumping behavior. When startled by boat engines, these fish can leap high out of the water, sometimes landing in boats and injuring people. This poses a serious danger to boaters and has made certain waterways hazardous for recreational activities. Experts warn that if Asian carp establish themselves in Lake Erie, they could make up 30% of the fish population within the next 2 decades. Such an invasion would likely drive out native species like walleye, severely impacting the local fishing industry and further destabilizing the ecosystem. The Red-Eared Slider. The widespread release of pet turtles has led to a global invasion by red-eared sliders, now found on every continent except Antarctica. Originally popularized as pets, partly due to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles craze, these turtles were often abandoned when they outgrew their tanks or lived longer than expected. This careless pet ownership has turned them into a major ecological threat. Red-eared sliders outcompete native turtles for food, nesting areas, and basking spots. In regions like Canada and California, they threaten native species such as the western painted turtle and the western pond turtle. Their success comes from their adaptability, large size, and rapid reproduction. Females can lay up to 180 eggs annually. This explosive growth has allowed them to dominate non-native habitats. Beyond their ecological impact, these turtles also pose health risks. They carry diseases like salmonella and respiratory infections, which can spread to wildlife and even humans. Worse, red-eared sliders have become breeding grounds for antibiotic-resistant bacteria due to their exposure to antibiotics in hatcheries. This means their invasion isn't just harming ecosystems, it could also pose a serious health risk. If left unchecked, their presence will continue to disrupt native wildlife and create lasting environmental challenges. Fire ants. Imagine sitting peacefully in the grass, only to suddenly feel a fiery sting that makes you jump up in panic. What you didn't realize is that you've just become the target of angry fire ants. Ants are already a nuisance, but fire ants are a whole different level of trouble. These tiny, relentless creatures can quickly turn a calm day into a painful ordeal. Once they find a spot to invade, like your garden or kitchen, they're almost impossible to get rid of. Fire ants, with their stinging zeal and vicious defenses, take things to another level. Unlike bees, fire ants will sting and keep stinging until they've exhausted their venom. If you've ever unknowingly sat on a fire ant nest, you know exactly how vicious they can be. These little terrors don't just sting, they unleash a deadly weapon. Not only do they attack with a venomous bite, but they also spray a painful formic acid that burns like fire. If you're unlucky enough to anger them, the onslaught could even be fatal. They're definitely not the kind of neighbors you'd want to have. The European starling. What began as a well-meaning introduction of a beautiful bird species quickly turned into one of North America's most disruptive invasions. European starlings, admired for their ability to mimic sounds, spread rapidly after their arrival, leaving a lasting impact on ecosystems and economies. Initially welcomed for their striking plumage and intelligence, they soon proved to be relentless competitors, driving out native species and dominating the skies. As cavity nesters, starlings aggressively seized nesting sites from birds like bluebirds and woodpeckers, significantly reducing their populations. Their invasion extended beyond the treetops. On the ground, they devoured crops, leading to massive agricultural losses. Each year, farmers suffer over $1 billion in damages due to these opportunistic feeders who consume everything from grains to livestock feed. Beyond agriculture, starlings pose a serious risk to aviation. Their large, dense flocks have caused dangerous bird strikes, threatening aircraft and passengers. Despite extensive efforts to control their numbers, they continue to thrive, showcasing the unintended consequences of human intervention. The European starling remains a striking example of how introducing a non-native species, however well-intended, can unleash widespread ecological and economic havoc. Burmese pythons. While it may seem like the alligator is the undisputed ruler of the food chain, especially in Florida's Everglades, there's another creature lurking that challenges its dominance: the Burmese python. These massive snakes have found the Floridian wetlands to be an ideal breeding ground, bringing them into frequent clashes with the region's alligators. Pythons thrive in warm climates, which is why they've quickly adapted to the Everglades and are spreading rapidly. In this ongoing battle for supremacy, the two reptiles have become bitter rivals, with alligators sometimes eating smaller pythons. However, the pythons, particularly the larger adults, present a real threat to the alligator population. When the odds are in their favor, these giant serpents can easily overpower an alligator, turning the encounter into a dangerous fight for survival. The struggle between these two creatures is a true battle of kill or be killed, with no room for hesitation. Pythons need to coil around their prey and suffocate it, an exhausting process that can take several minutes, especially with a large alligator. The question remains: can these powerful snakes truly conquer such a formidable meal, or are they simply biting off more than they can chew? Feral cats. From beloved pets to ecological threats, feral cats have become one of the most overlooked environmental disasters. The US is home to an estimated 70 to 100 million feral and outdoor cats, many born in the wild or abandoned. These highly adaptable hunters survive by preying on local wildlife, wreaking havoc on ecosystems. Each feral cat kills an average of 7 birds annually, leading to over 1 billion bird deaths every year. But birds aren't their only victims. Small mammals, reptiles, and rabbits also fall prey, with total animal losses exceeding 2 billion annually. Islands like Hawaii face the worst impact, as native species, unprepared for such predators, are pushed toward extinction. Domestic cats, introduced by European settlers centuries ago, have since multiplied uncontrollably, leaving destruction in their wake. Beyond environmental damage, these cats spread diseases like rabies, cat scratch fever, and plague, posing a serious public health risk. To manage the crisis, many advocate for trap-neuter return (TNR) programs, preventing reproduction while allowing cats to live out their lives. However, Conservationists argue that releasing them back into the wild only perpetuates the problem. As the debate continues, one thing is clear: feral cats have become a growing threat we can no longer ignore. Kudzu. Kudzu, often called the vine that ate the South, is the epitome of a plant gone rogue. Originally native to Japan and China, this invasive species was introduced to the United States during the 1876 Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia as a decorative vine. Later, in the 1930s, it was promoted for its ability to control soil erosion. What initially seemed like a harmless plant soon evolved into an unstoppable force of nature. With its rapid growth and resilience, Kudzu may have seemed like a beneficial addition at first, but it quickly transformed into a relentless invader that would swallow everything in its path. This climbing perennial vine can grow up to 1 foot per day under ideal conditions, forming thick mats of foliage that smother trees, shrubs, and even buildings. Kudzu flourishes in the warm, sunny climate of the southeastern United States, making regions like Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi easy targets for its expansion. Each year, this vine spreads across thousands of acres, outcompeting native vegetation and destroying vital habitats. It also disrupts power lines, overtakes entire fields, and, to make matters worse, contributes to air pollution by increasing ozone emissions. It's clear this plant isn't just a nuisance, it has become a full-blown environmental disaster. Zebra mussels. Zebra mussels, small but relentless freshwater invaders, have become one of North America's most destructive pests. Native to the Caspian and Black Seas, they arrived in the Great Lakes in the 1980s, unknowingly transported in ballast water from transatlantic ships. This accidental introduction unleashed an environmental crisis that continues to spiral out of control. Since their arrival, zebra mussels have spread rapidly across the US and Canada, thriving in lakes and rivers. These prolific filter feeders consume massive amounts of plankton, clearing up murky waters but starving native fish and aquatic life of essential food sources. Their invasion disrupts entire ecosystems, throwing food chains out of balance. Worse still, zebra mussels attach themselves in dense clusters, smothering native mussel populations and clogging water systems. They cause extensive damage to infrastructure by blocking intake pipes, water treatment facilities, and industrial equipment. Power plants and municipalities have spent billions trying to combat this stubborn invader. Even pulling intake pipes from the water often reveals them encrusted with these invasive mollusks. Though tiny, zebra mussels have become a massive problem, proving that even the smallest creatures can create environmental and economic chaos on an enormous scale. The cane toad. What if a single species, introduced for a noble purpose, instead unleashed ecological chaos? The cane toad is one of the world's most infamous invaders, proving how a well-intentioned plan can backfire disastrously. Native to South and Central America, these amphibians were introduced to various regions to control pests, only to become an even bigger problem. In 1935, Queensland, Australia, welcomed the cane toad as a biological weapon against sugarcane pests. However, instead of saving crops, these toads rapidly spread, outcompeting native species and wreaking havoc on ecosystems. Highly adaptable, they thrive in harsh environments, from droughts to extreme heat, and consume anything small enough to fit in their mouths. Their rapid reproduction fuels their takeover. One female can lay up to 30,000 eggs at a time. Yet their deadliest weapon isn't their numbers but their toxic defense. Their skin secretes bufatoxins, a lethal poison that kills most predators, including native reptiles, mammals, and even household pets. Cane toads have since invaded parts of Asia, the Pacific Islands, and Florida, disrupting ecosystems and outcompeting native amphibians. With their unstoppable spread and devastating impact, they serve as a cautionary tale of how human intervention can unintentionally tip nature into chaos. The brown marmorated stink bug. The brown marmorated stink bug arrived in the United States from East Asia in the late 1990s, likely hitching a ride on cargo shipments. Since then, it has spread to over 42 states, causing chaos in both homes and agricultural fields. With its shield-shaped brown body, Measuring about half an inch to 3/4 of an inch, this invasive pest has an insatiable appetite. It feeds on more than 170 plant species, including apples, pears, peaches, beans, and ornamental plants, making it a nightmare for farmers and gardeners alike. These bugs aren't just an outdoor menace, they invade homes as well. As temperatures drop in the fall, they seek warmth and shelter, squeezing through tiny cracks in windows and doors. Once inside, they become a persistent nuisance, emitting a foul odor when disturbed, which gives them their infamous name. Beyond their stench, stink bugs inflict serious damage on crops. Using sharp mouthparts, they puncture fruits and plants, injecting digestive enzymes that cause deformities and premature ripening. This feeding behavior leads to significant crop losses, particularly in apples and soybeans, costing farmers millions. With no natural predators to keep them in check, these invaders continue to spread, wreaking havoc wherever they go. Nutria. These large, web-footed rodents have an affinity for the water, preferring to swim rather than lounge on land. Living in burrows along riverbanks, lake shores, and wetlands, nutria are exceptional swimmers, capable of staying submerged for up to 5 minutes without needing to come up for air. Native to South America, nutria have found their way into various parts of the world, including Canada and more than a dozen states in the United States. They multiply fast and eat vegetation constantly. How did they end up so far from home? Well, humans are to blame once again. In a misguided effort to populate fur farms, these creatures were transplanted from their native land. However, as often happens with creatures who don't belong in captivity, many managed to escape and, once free, proved particularly skilled at reproducing and establishing large wild populations. Today, the nutria is a prime example of an invasive species, an unwelcome visitor making its mark in places it has no business being, wreaking havoc wherever it goes. Northern snakehead fish. In 2002, an unexpected and rather alarming visitor made its way into a pond in Maryland. The northern snakehead, a predator fish native to China, Korea, and Russia. This fish had somehow found its way across the globe and into the United States. The northern snakehead is a top predator, and they reproduce very quickly and in large numbers. While its arrival may have been initially shocking, it was just the beginning of a much bigger problem. These resilient fish, which have established populations in several states, particularly around the Chesapeake Bay, have proven to be masters of survival. Not only can they thrive in various water conditions, but they can also breathe air and survive out of water for up to 4 days, thanks to special organs. But that's not the creepiest part. The northern snakehead can also walk on land. With no natural predators to keep them in check, these ruthless invaders are wreaking havoc, preying on anything they can find, from other fish to amphibians, insects, and even small mammals. Trying to control their population has become an ecological nightmare, and it looks like this fish is here to stay. Asian tiger mosquito. As the Asian tiger mosquito expands its range, it doesn't just alter the landscape, it brings a wave of disease and fear. Mosquitoes are already among the deadliest creatures on Earth, responsible for more human deaths annually than any other species. Recent estimates suggest their bites contribute to over 1 million deaths each year. The problem began in the early 1980s when a particularly aggressive species arrived in the United States via a shipment of used tires. This mosquito, named for its striking black and white stripes, didn't stay confined. It spread rapidly across more than 40 states and continues to expand. Unlike most mosquitoes, which prefer dusk and dawn, the Asian tiger mosquito bites aggressively during the day, often before you even notice. The females are particularly resourceful, laying eggs in the smallest pools of water. Less than an ounce is enough to breed the next generation. Their adaptability makes them nearly impossible to control, especially in urban environments. A 2019 Nature microbiology study warned that climate change, urbanization, and human expansion will only fuel their spread. More than just a nuisance, these mosquitoes transmit dangerous diseases, including yellow fever, dengue, chikungunya, and Zika virus, posing a growing public health threat. The spongy moth. The spongy moth, accidentally introduced in 1869 by an ambitious entomologist, has become one of North America's most relentless invaders. Originally intended for crossbreeding with silkworms, these moths escaped their controlled environment and quickly spread, creating an ecological nightmare. By 1900, they had firmly established themselves in New England, and despite aggressive containment efforts, they proved far too resilient. Today, they infest over 20 US states and parts of eastern Canada, turning what was once a localized issue into a widespread crisis. The real destruction comes from the larvae, caterpillars with an insatiable hunger. For up to 40 days, they relentlessly devour tree leaves, often stripping entire forests bare. Trees already weakened by drought or disease may not survive the assault. With a diet covering over 300 tree species, no forest, urban park, or agricultural land is safe from their impact. Beyond deforestation, the moth's devastation disrupts ecosystems, affecting wildlife that depends on trees for food and shelter. The economic toll is staggering, with approximately $3 billion spent annually on control measures. Despite relentless efforts, the spongy moth continues to spread, proving that once an invasive species takes hold, reversing the damage is an uphill battle. Wild boar. In the wilderness of the United States, wild boars are running rampant, behaving as if they own the land. Native to Eurasia and North Africa, these animals were introduced, intentionally and unintentionally, by humans, only to become a major ecological disaster. In states like Louisiana, feral hogs have become a relentless problem, with an estimated population exceeding 750,000. Hunting them has become a popular activity, yet despite these efforts, their numbers continue to climb. These animals are incredibly resilient and reproduce at an alarming rate, making population control nearly impossible. Their rapid breeding fuels their unchecked expansion, causing widespread environmental destruction. Wild boars are opportunistic feeders, devouring everything from plants and roots to small animals, severely disrupting local ecosystems. They destroy crops, outcompete native species for food, and tear through habitats, leaving destruction in their wake. Their relentless burrowing also accelerates soil erosion, further damaging the land. Beyond their environmental impact, wild boars pose a direct threat to both humans and livestock. Their aggressive nature makes encounters dangerous, and farmers and ranchers bear the brunt of their destruction, often suffering significant financial losses. With no natural predators to curb their growth, these invaders continue to spread, creating a challenge that seems impossible to control. House sparrow. The house sparrow, once native to Europe and parts of Asia, never intended to settle in America. But in 1851, a group of well-meaning individuals released 100 of these birds into Brooklyn, New York, believing they would help control insect populations. The sparrows, however, had other plans. Highly adaptable and resourceful, they quickly took to their new environment, thriving in urban landscapes where they could nest in the smallest cracks and crevices. With a steady food supply from discarded crumbs and readily available insects, they spread rapidly. What began as a small introduction soon turned into a continent-wide invasion. House sparrows expanded far beyond Brooklyn, establishing themselves in cities, towns, and farmlands across North America. But their success has come at a cost. These birds are not just survivors, they are aggressive competitors. They defend nesting sites fiercely, driving out native birds, destroying eggs, and even killing hatchlings to take over nesting spaces. Their dominance has contributed to the decline of many native bird species. Now found from coast to coast, house sparrows are impossible to remove. Their presence is a lasting reminder that even small, well-intentioned introductions can spiral into ecological disruptions that are nearly impossible to undo. Nile Monitor lizards. In Florida, an unnoticed trade of exotic pets has unleashed a storm of invasive species, reshaping the state's wildlife forever. The state is home to more non-native species than any other place in the United States. Some of these species are particularly alarming, such as the Nile crocodile, which has even been spotted in Florida's wild areas. While there is no evidence to suggest that Nile crocodiles have established breeding populations in the state, the situation is different for Nile Monitor lizards. These lizards have successfully created breeding populations, particularly in Lee County. Their ability to adapt to a wide variety of food sources makes them a major threat to native species, leading to a considerable decline in local wildlife. Moreover, Nile Monitor lizards have been linked to the mysterious disappearances of both livestock and pets. With a high reproductive rate and the ability to thrive in both freshwater and saltwater environments, these lizards pose a significant ecological challenge. The signal crayfish. It was supposed to be the answer to a problem, but the signal crayfish brought more than anyone bargained for: plague, damage, and chaos. The signal crayfish seemed like the perfect solution, a commercially viable species that could be exported to the booming Scandinavian market. Unfortunately, these crayfish were also carrying the very plague that had decimated the native populations, and they quickly spread it to even more of the native species in the United Kingdom. The signal crayfish have caused a major blow to the native white-clawed crayfish, but the damage doesn't stop there. They're also messing with the local fish and frog populations, not only eating them directly but also going after their eggs. As if that wasn't enough, these invaders have a serious environmental impact too. Their love for burrowing deep into riverbanks weakens the soil, leading to erosion and further destruction of the ecosystem. While they are considered by some to be good tasting, experts estimate that the damage caused by these crayfish has cost millions of pounds, and sadly, it doesn't look like they're going anywhere anytime soon. Raccoon. Once a curious critter native to North America, raccoons have become an unstoppable force, invading new territories and causing havoc. With exceptionally sensitive hands, they can hunt in water, pry open containers, and even sneak into homes. Many languages reference their dexterous paws, highlighting one of their most distinctive traits. Their signature black bandit mask isn't just for show, it reduces glare, much like an athlete's eye black, helping them see better at night. Despite their intelligence, raccoons don't always have the best reputation. Highly adaptable, they thrive in urban areas, rummaging through trash and making the most of whatever food they find. Opportunistic feeders, they are always on the lookout for their next meal. Some researchers even compare their intelligence to that of certain primates, which explains why they flourish in human-dominated environments. But raccoons are no longer confined to North America. They've spread to parts of Europe, where in Germany they're known as wash bears, due to their habit of dunking food in water. In Japan, pet raccoons that either escaped or were released have now spread across 42 of the country's 47 prefectures, causing millions of yen in agricultural damage and outcompeting native species like the raccoon dog.